was not Starbucks.
Turn off the cell phones. I can see all of you have your little notebook and your little pen. That's great because there is going to be a little bit of math involved at the end of this. So we're gonna do this together, and so I'm gonna expect you guys to participate as well on it and so forth. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna be presenting this presentation, but with Maria as well. Maria has a lot of experience with a certain type of investor, and I have experience with another type of investor. In the last two years, I myself helped close a portfolio of about $7 million. That was a purely financial deal. But actually, Home 61 as a whole has been closing similar type of deals for quite a while now, and has actually managed several financial type of investors. We'll talk about what it is. And we're going to talk a little bit about this right now. So if you can switch to the next slide. So during this presentation, we're going to spend a little bit of time about, first of all, why work with investors? What are the benefits, but what also are the downfalls of working with investors? Why does it make sense? Why does it might not make sense? The other thing, we're going to talk a little bit about nomenclature. And I can tell you it's going to be a little bit boring, but it's absolutely essential. If you ever want to work with investors, you need to be able to understand their language. You need to be able to speak with it. And through this, I'm going to be calling up on you guys to try to explain to me and to the rest of the room the concept. Afterwards, we're going to talk about the two different types of investors that we have, and give you a little bit of their psych profiles, what they care about, what they don't care about, and some of the example on how to work with them. At the end, we're going to have a little bit of a case scenario to try to discover if one of the properties that we're currently looking at is a good investment or a bad investment. And then at the very end, we're going to be looking at if we change just one data, how does it change that investment? And this is where the little bit of math will come in. So are we able to change the slide or not? No. Because otherwise, I'm going to have to do everything from memory. It's going to be a little bit more challenging. Are those being connected? Because you're not on the screen right here.
We're doing it.
I guess I'll take care of this. Carlos, can you please help us?
Yeah.
All right. I'm guessing this is it, and then you need to press here. There we go. Thank you. So, what I just said, if you can move to the next. Can you move to the next slide, please? All right. So first of all, why work with investors? Who wants to kick us off? Why work with investors? Why would it make sense to work with investors? What are some of the perks? Anna?
Repeat business, because they tend to buy more as time goes on.
So repeat business. That's a good one. What else? No, that's it. Just repeat business. Screw that. Screw that. Well, how about? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the investor's going to sell, so you have another prospect.
Okay.
Buy or another lead.
That's correct. Very often investors actually put their property to rent out, so then now you also automatically have a lease. They might have other people if they found a good deal. They can actually find something. I think that's a very good one actually, because the portfolios that we have sold, the $7 million portfolio, once we sold the first $2 million, then actually, as the people were very happy, they kept on investing into the same product over and over and over again with them and with their friend, etc. In that very same product that I'm talking about, we must have like 8 different people now who have invested in that particular product. But there's another little part that is also very true, is that ego. We like to work, I work with investors, guys. This is who I am, this is what I do. And that's definitely a part of it. It's a little bit of a perk as well. And that's completely okay. This is some of the cool thing about it. What are some of the downside? If you can switch slide. So those are a little bit more money, nice little ego, that's a nice little boost. What are some of the downsides?
Sometimes it can be more difficult to find the right
Alright, so I think it takes long, it can take longer to find the deal. I think that's very clear. What else?
They're looking for a deal, so mostly what they're gonna offer or put out an offer is gonna be
Alright,
largely away from the listing.
if you're looking for big size investment, is there more or less people on the table?
More.
There's more people on the table. And guess what? All those people, what do they want?
A deal?
A deal.
They want a deal. They want to cut.
Mhm.
They want to cut. So because whenever you work with big financial investors, they have their manager, they have their accountant. There is a fucking lawyer who never wants a deal to be done apparently because he always wants to put more time. There's more people around the table. You can switch to the next slide. That's the downside. All of those people want to have a piece of your money, and also waiting to deal with more people, with deals that are harder to find, it takes much longer. And so that actually pushes you into a very dangerous area, which is you might end up doing a lot less deals. If this deal goes through, it actually changes your year. But if the deal doesn't go through, for whatever reason, probably the lawyer, now you might be having a very bad year. So this is one of the very big challenges of working with investors, and one we need to also know, because you're going to have to work with a lot of egos. It's going to be difficult to find the properties, but if you do find the property and you do find a project that works, you might have a very big payoff. So it's a very hard, complex work, but can have a very good payoff. So I think this is something that we're all kind of intuitively aware of it, but I just really wanted to restate it. So if we can move to the next slide. So the next part is a little bit of nomenclature. So I didn't really go through the easy stuff, like what is the price of the home, because I figured that all of you guys kind of knew that. But I went to the thing that might be a little bit less familiar to you guys, but it's still very important. And please take note, because in the very end of this, we will have you will need to be able to answer some of those questions. So let's go to the next part. Nomenclature, acquisition cost. Who wants to? Yes, it is written here, but do not just read it to me. But who can actually tell me what is the acquisition cost in their own terms?
Anyone? Transaction fees?
Cost of
The
acquiring.
cost of acquiring the property.
The cost of acquiring the property. Why might that be important? Because very often we kind of ignore it. It's just 2% closing cost. Why is it so important for an investor?
When you put everything, you input everything in the spreadsheet, it changes every single percentage, and every single fee will change the capitalization or whatever. If you're doing a flipping, carrying cost will be very important on how much you hold the property.
Absolutely.
and so forth.
Also, so I think you're very correct. Acquisition cost, all the costs need to go there. What happens in a lot of cases when you work with, for example, portfolios that might be out of state? In terms of your commission, what can happen?
Lower commission, like in.
So you can have lower commission, okay? What else can happen if you're not in Florida?
Taxes.
Okay, taxes. There's different taxes. But what happened to you specifically to your commission? What's a major change for your investor based on your commission if you're outside of Florida? All right, he might have to pay your commission. So the buyer might have to pay your commission. And in certain type of deals in Florida as well, the buyer has to pay the commission. Now, what did you just say about acquisition cost? Everything matters.
Of course,
Every
yeah.
single line matters. So he's going to look at you as an acquisition cost. And so he's going to want to negotiate this. So very, very important to understand and be able to portray your added value here, because you want to make sure that he doesn't start slashing, because for him it's going to be a 1% discount. For you it's going to be a vast amount of your commission. All right, loan to value. This is something that all of you guys should know, but for the fuck of it, who's going to tell me?
The percentage that you're gonna
absolutely. How does that make a big difference, particularly if you have capital gains? Okay, if the price of the property increased after a year, how does a loan to value become so important?
You get a bigger return.
You get-
If you finance more of it.
If you finance more, you get a much bigger return. If I have to put, let's say, $10,000 down, and the property has increased by 30,000, well, I just did 3x on my money. If on the other hand, if I have to put, 30,000 down, and then I make an extra 30 in gain, I double my money. This is different, very, very different ratio. So this is very important as well to investors.
Well, that's when cost of the money, on borrowing money comes in.
And we're going to see exactly an example that goes over this. So let's keep on going. All right, gross scheduled income. I love that. This is gross scheduled income, by the way, and the difference between the gross scheduled income and the gross operating income is this is what you guys always sell, and this is the reality. So, what is the gross scheduled income?
So just what it says, I guess the rent based on full occupancy of the property.
With no fees, no vacancy rate, no insurance, nothing on it.
Yeah, everything goes wonderful, right? The property doesn't break, etc. This number is very important. Actually, Anna, I think 2 weeks ago or 1 month ago, said, hey, whenever we paint a picture to our clients, we tend to really go not only to the gross operating income, but actually to the net operating income, which is a little scary. Can we show the gross operating income, and more importantly, can we show the gross scheduled income? And I think that is actually very correct. Whenever you will be working with an investor, it's very important to show the truth, but it's also important to work with the same tools as everyone. If everybody's selling a gross income of, like, let's say 10%, and you're saying, well, my net is 4, the person only remembered 10 and 4. So you need to know the net, but you need to also know how to sell the gross. So that's very, very important. And the difference between those two is that, well, you have vacancy, you might have some losses, and on and so forth here. In our tools on Home 61, we give you actually the gross operating income, and we give you the net operating income. We don't give you this yet, but we will. All right, next. All right, operating expenses and net operating income. I'm guessing you guys know, but somebody other than Alan and Anna give me an answer.
Expenses throughout the profits year, like insurance, taxes, management.
Absolutely. Whenever you own a property, you have expenses. HOA comes to mind. Insurance comes to mind. Real estate taxes. Not all taxes. Real estate taxes come into this play. And the net operating income is basically the difference between your income and your expenses. Any question on this? And guys, if you have questions, it's a good time, because there is a little bit of a challenge afterwards. So it's a good time to ask.
So why wouldn't we include mortgage expense as an expense?
So you don't consider them, because you need to calculate basically the result of the property itself, because loans and on and so forth might actually be different from
Personal.
on personal. You might get a 5, I might get a 6, but the property, whether I buy it or you buy it, will be the same. But it comes into play very, very soon. All right, next thing. But good question, very good question. Cash on cash return. Okay, this is absolutely key. Cash on cash return, and then we'll talk about equity buildup. Those are absolutely key. So cash on cash return. What should we count in the cash on cash return? Why is it so key?
Come again with the question, sorry.
All right, so cash on cash return is the most important thing that you're going to do when you work with an investor. This is the actual thing that he cares about. And the question is, what does it actually mean? How do you calculate this? What does that include? Doesn't include? And please tell it to me in your own word. Take your time. It's completely okay. This is the most important question because any investor worth his salt is going to care about this, or any financial investor worth his salt is going to care about this.
Well, that's your cap, right? Your gross cap. When you divide the cash flow with the initial investment with no depreciation, no amortization, no fees, no nothing, right?
So, all right. So that is correct. Anybody else wants to try?
I think that,
You don't get to try. If you've done the presentation if you've prepared the presentation with me, you don't get to try. Tell me, Abel.
well, he made an investment
Yes,
and he wants his profit.
exactly.
So
So,
he wants to see the return based on what he invested.
absolutely. But in this case, it's a return that's not a return on asset. And guys, I know there's a lot of financial terms, and I know some of it might just be a little bit complex, etc. Definitely I cannot give 2 or 3 years worth of financial class in 2 hours. But if you need to walk away with anything, cash on cash return works basically like a bank account, which is how much money is going out versus how much money is going in if I sell. And this is what people care about. What is the out and what is the money in. So that includes the loan to value, how much money did I put in? How much is the operating cost that I have? What are the acquisition costs? So all of this is the money out. But also, at that point, there is the debt servicing. This is what we talked about. It doesn't come in the net operating income, but it comes in the cash on cash return. Debt servicing, this is money that goes out. Debt servicing is, of course, the interest plus capital that you must have paid during the year. So that's all the cash out. The cash in is all of the rent that you're getting, and then if you sell the property, is a share of the property that you own plus the capital that have increased, and all of this is going to be the cash in. All right. So basically, it basically means if I put how much money do I have to put out versus how much I have to put in, net of everything, and that's giving you your cash on cash return. And this is what people care about. I put 30 down, I got 35. I got 35 at the end. After I paid the lawyer, after I paid the accountant, the thing, etc., the management, all of this. Property management fees goes in there. It's all the money out versus all the money in. Is that clear? Make sense?
But you tend to do the cash on cash return on a 2 to 3 year projection, or you do it right away?
So actually, the reality is that you should do it at 2 different times. You should do it if it's a yield play. So if you're looking to get the money from your rental property, so it's directly year 1, year 2, year 3, and so forth. If you sell the property, this is the next time you need to do it. When you sell, this is the time where you do your cash on cash return. And this, by the way, is only the true cash on cash return happen at the sale. So all of the other one are actually projections, because there is an equity. There's an equity buildup, and let's talk about the equity buildup for a second. Who can explain to me equity buildup? So, yeah.
Just paying off your loan over the time, so your loan to value is decreasing with time?
Very close, not quite, but let's give a concrete example with easy numbers. Let's say that I put 20K down and I have a loan for 80K. So nice and simple. All right. After a year, my equity buildup actually is my equity buildup is 5%. All right. What does that mean? I had an equity buildup of 5% on the loan of 80K for a property of 100K. I put 20% down. What does that mean?
So is it because you paid 5% down of your loan?
Yeah.
So now that switches to equity versus debt?
Absolutely. So you paid 5% of your capital. That's quite important, because when you sell, let's say that you have no capital gain, and and says, let's say the price of the property did not increase, and you sell for 100K, what percentage of that property is now yours? Well, it's 5% plus
Plus
The
the
additional.
25%. So it's the 5% plus the initial pay. All right. This is extremely important. Yes, go ahead, Tim.
Would equity buildup take into account, increase in market value?
It doesn't, so that's very important. So that's exactly where I was trying to go. They used to have a very nice board on the side. But basically, the equity buildup is what is the percentage of the house that you now own at the time that of the price of the purchase. The price of the purchase. If the price has gone up or down, you don't consider it when you calculate the equity buildup. But it is extremely important. But basically, it is what is the percentage of the house you own if the property had not changed in value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's very important, because if you sell your home and you only get 20% or 25% of the sell price, it's a very vastly different thing. And this is actually the reason why in the US people get rich by buying homes. Is because very often people have difficulty putting money in saving accounts, but they don't have any problem putting money towards capital, towards a capital, because they consider it like kind of a bill. So whenever they pay their interest in capital for their property, basically a big chunk of that goes towards the capital. So every year they start earning a bigger and bigger part of their home. So after 30 years, without realizing it, even though they absolutely paid for it, they now own an equity for 300K, for 500K. This is how Americans in general get rich, is by actually putting the money away into their home little by little. And furthermore, even though the market has up and down, if you look at the equity market in real estate over 30 years, you see that it grows. So it's very rare that somebody who is in their primary home will move when the market goes down. They typically actually withstand the ups and the down, and it doesn't really matter, but they suddenly have 500K that they never had before. And then a lot of really cool things can happen, such as they're able to get loans against it, etc. So it makes them a lot richer. So the equity buildup is the number one way that Americans actually make money. It's not necessarily the way investors make money, but it's number one way that regular people do. All right, let's go to the next one. Annual debt servicing. I think that's we talked a little bit about it. It's basically the money that goes out. This is important for cash on cash return. We've talked about it quite a few times. I think we should be clear on this. Everybody knows what debt servicing is? Yeah, right, cool. Let's keep on going. All right, before we move to the two basic type of investors, is there any questions or any nomenclature that you might want to ask me now that you have encountered that is not necessarily here? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't know every single financial terms, but I will do my best to help out. To help out. Now, everybody, are you good? Any question on those? All right, feeling confident? All right.
We're learning as we go.
Okay, cap rate. Let's go with the cap rate for just a second. I kind of flew over it, but it's a good review. What's a gross cap rate?
The amount that you expect to make at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, but what are the two numbers that you need to calculate it? No, not you, Timothy, who is a team leader.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Cap rate. How do you what is a cap rate? Gross or net? You can give me either or. I'm happy.
It's the net.
Okay, but what is a gross cap rate? Or what is a net cap rate? You cannot answer either.
Capitalization of the initial investment.
All
So let's say you
right.
buy a property for 100K, you rent it for $1,000, you're making 10% a year gross.
Okay, that is, I don't know, I didn't hear the number, so maybe the math or not is correct, but the calculation is correct. It's basically, if you rent out the property, what is the percentage that that rent is going to pay of the initial purchase price. So we're going to go back with my example for 100K because it's nice and simple. If I make $10,000 in rent gross before the operating expenses, and I make $10,000, then it's 10,000 divided by 100,000. I made back 10% of my equity. However, we've seen there is net operating, there is operating expenses. When you deduct the operating expenses and you have the net income of the property, the net operating income of the property, that you divide that amount. So let's say you started at 10, then you have all the expenses, the taxes, the HOA, and so forth. Whatever is left is going to say, let's say 4K. You do 4K divided by the initial price, which was 100K. Your net cap rate is 4%. Now this is actually very important because the 4% is actually what's going to go in your pocket. And then it becomes very, very interesting because let's say that you have a loan, and the loan basically is capital plus your capital payment plus your interest is below 4%, which is in today's market not possible, but we'll just pretend that it is for a second. If your capital plus interest payments or your debt servicing, as we have seen just a few seconds, is 3%, but your cap rate is 4%, you can basically get an apartment for free, or an apartment for just 20%. Then the apartment will pay itself. I know, a little complex, a little bit thing, but it's okay. We're going to go over it as many times as we need. But are we clear on the cap rate? This is absolutely key. On all of the investments, I'm actually currently, I have a portfolio in West Palm Beach, in a place called Marsh Harbor. It's a nice little place. Properties are 130K. Selling it currently with a lot of FHA loans, etc. The cap rate that we had was about 5% 5% net, and it was very interesting because the difference between the gross and the net was actually very close to each other. So that was very nice. However, when I sold it, I'm now selling. I bought it for 100K. I'm selling it for 130K. So the way I calculate my return, my cash on cash, is I take the 30K that I had on top of it. So that's my capital gain. Then, and everything was paid cash, which happens to make our life easier. Then I took my net cap rate that I've taken year over year. It was over 2 years. So I added all of this money, and then all of the money that came in, I subtracted all of the money that I had to put down, and that actually gave me my cash on cash return. So it's all the money in from the rent, so from the net cap rate, plus the increase in value, and this gave me my cash on cash return. I'm going to leave you with one last little element on this, which is called internal rate of return. Okay, internal rate of return. Now, this example I gave at Marsh Harbor, I sold it after 2 years. I had 5% return both year, and then I had a 30% increase in appreciation. Okay, so what would be my give me a range where my internal rate of return would be? Would it be between 0 and 5? Would it be between 5 and 15? Or would it be would it be over 30?
Under 30.
Hmm?
Under 30, over 5.
That is the correct answer. That is the correct answer. Can somebody explain to me the rate of return? All right, somebody beside Anna? Anybody else? All right, go for it, Anna.
It's just the return you have each year, but you weigh it over the full time. So you have to calculate all your return, and then you have to calculate it based on how many years pass. So you do it, it's basically your annual return.
That's my annual return. That is actually quite important. So I'm going to give you the same example that I just had with Marsh Harbor. Let's say that I just made $30,000 extra. Is that good or is that bad?
It's good.
Is it? Well, now let's say that I've done 30,000 return, a 30,000 return, but not over 2 years, but over 30 years. All right. So now, is it good or is it bad?
Might as well just open a CD account.
That is exactly it. Okay, so that is very important what he just said. That is very important what he just said. So he said that there is something else better for you. So if you get a 30% increase, which you would think like, holy fuck, 30% increase, that is awesome. Well, it turned out that if I had taken the same amount of money and I had put it in a saving account, which is much more liquid, which is very easy to access, I would have made more money. So there is something called an opportunity cost. So the internal rate of return basically tells you, are you beating the market or is there something else better out there? So the number of years on which the investment is going to be done is also very, very important. So, because otherwise you just put it in a CD and that's it. Exactly. So, that was the last thing I wanted to keep you with all of those elements, by the way, with all of those elements, you can have a basic, if you understand all those elements right there, and we're going to share with you the nomenclature slides with you guys afterwards. And if you're not part of Home 61, it's not a problem. Just simply leave your email at the end. We'll email it to you as well. If you understand those key concepts, you can talk to any investors. I'm not going to say you're going to close any investors, but you can now talk to them on the same footing, and you can have a discussion that is actually productive. So absolutely key to talk the same language. All right, so 2 basic type of investors. Let's go. So I love it because I was looking for a slide to put it here, and I Googled it, and this came out. It was already done. We didn't have to design it or anything. It's so common that actually somebody already did the slide for me. So that was awesome. I wish all my slides were like that. There is 2 types of investors. There is the financial investors, and there is the emotional investors. And we're going to start, and I'm going to talk about the financial investor, and Maria, who's a much more emotional person than I am, clearly, is going to talk about the emotional investors. But it's also because this is the type of people that we have worked with before. So the financial investor, who can tell me a little bit about the difference between the 2? In this case, this doesn't tell you much. But what is the primary goal of a financial investor? All right.
Percentage.
Profit, money, getting to the number. It's a numbers game, right? All right. And typically around the guy who cares about the money, there is a ton of people who also really like the money. They have their PwC consultant who's ready to take all of the money as well. There is a lawyer who comes from Cravat who's ready to also take all of the money. There's a lot of people who are interested in the money, the transaction. How about the emotional investor? By the way, in your portfolios that we talked about this morning, all of them are kind of like are emotional investors. So they kind of fit like in this. So for example, Fernando, I think we talked about emotional investor. What does it care about?
We care about different elements, risk, change of.
Yes, risk. I think risk is a good one.
Risk is a major thing. Then
Risk.
change of environment, just a lot of perceptions that come into play, and not only the numbers.
Yeah, not only the numbers. That's correct.
My mom's totally an emotional investment. She kind of sees the potential of a property, so I can make this nicer. She won't even calculate it really. She's like, if it's a good deal and I can make it better, I know I'll make money.
Yes,
without calculating it.
Exactly. So it's a good deal. I want a good deal. That's definitely part of it. What is their biggest fear?
For the emotional investor.
Yeah.
Making a bad decision.
Making a bad decision. Okay. So so that's absolutely key. The financial investor will say, I'm going to invest in 10 different things. Some of them will lose, some of them will win, but when it all comes down to the end, we will win. The emotional investor has one primary fear. I'm going to lose money. I'm going to lose money. And so that's very different because that guy is going to buy really his second home. Because even though he may never live there, he's picturing himself in it. And he wants to be like, it needs to be mine, it needs to be nice, it needs to be remodeled, it needs to be in a good neighborhood. And more importantly, I should not lose money. That guy is willing to lose money as long as when it all comes down, he makes money. And that's very, very important. It's a very different kind of attitude. It's a very different type of person. It's a very different type of management. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we're first going to talk about the financial investor. Typically, a financial investor, a true financial investor, will have an investment thesis. We talk a lot about cap rate. We talk a lot about rental properties, but that's not the only type of investment there is in real estate. Who can tell me a little bit more, a few more investment possibilities in real estate?
Development, what else?
Flipping, development, all of this is correct. All right, anything else?
Appreciation, just with like pre-construction and selling when it's finished.
Appreciation, thank you, appreciation, exactly. And there's definitely a lot of different ways. What is one of the keywords that we used earlier that is true throughout all of the different types of investment? Because the cap rate might not matter to somebody who is doing a new development, who is just working on appreciation. So what is a okay, I'll not give the keyword while I'm talking, but cash on cash. If you work on the cash on cash, you will get the right answer every single time. Cash on cash works through every single type of investment.
I mean, not cap rate or percentage, but at the end of the day, investor care about percentage.
So cash on cash return. Cash on cash return, you will get it right. All right, a few things. They typically are aggressive, but they tend to be realistic. Whenever you have a professional investor talking to you, he will come and you and say like, I want to have 8% net return. Yeah, that is actually possible. It's fucking hard, but it's possible. People who tell you, I want to have a 30% return every single year is not a professional investor. So they typically are aggressive, but they are realistic. They do not care about the properties, like at all. Like they're not going to see them. They're not going to picture themselves there. Most likely because lower end properties tend to have a better yield. They actually don't even want to go to the neighborhood. Like they would never picture themselves. They don't care about the non-essentials. They don't care about the doorknob doesn't work. They don't care about the carpet is moldy, etc. They don't care about all of this. They only care about the number. The other thing, they expect everyone to be more professional to them. All right, who can explain this to me?
Well, the client wants us to be like the person in charge, and they will trust you about the transaction.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So what they want you to do is they want you to do the grunt work. They want you to do the legwork. They want you to do the analysis. They want you to have everything wrapped in a nice little bow tie so that they can make a decision, yes or no. They want everything to be so perfect that the only thing they need to do is say yes or no. And I'll give you a clear example for our Ohio portfolio. We had prepared a lot of work. We did a due diligence on over 300 different properties. We had the demographic analysis. We had looked at like how the city was going. I mean, lots of groundwork. Did a beautiful presentation. Sent everything ready. The guy showed up in shorts. But it doesn't matter. We were well dressed as I can be. And showed up, but it doesn't matter because for him we have done all the groundwork so that he could make an informed decision. The information was clear. He could say yes or no. He said yes. So that's an expectation. So for example, whenever you meet up with a friend who is also an investor, that is the expectation. Yes, he's by his beach house on the side of the pool. He wants everything to be ready for him. It all comes down to number, even you. So that's very, very important. When they're going to go look at cash on cash return, and when they look at only the numbers, they see your commission, your work, and on and so forth as, are you getting paid and adding more value to the deal, or are you not really an essential to the deal? That's absolutely key. If they don't see you as an added value, as a financial added value inside of it, they will slash your commission. Everywhere where they can cut cost, acquisition cost is absolutely key. getting a percentage down here or there is absolutely key. They will go at it. So being professional and being awesome and giving them access to the deal and making sure that you control the deal is absolutely key. It's absolutely key. It always comes down to cost. It's much easier to lower costs than to improve than to improve returns. So be very careful. There again, a lot of people involved. A lot of people wants to have money. A lot of people at the table. So this is very key. Then I want to give you an example of some of the things that it took to do the deal happen. All right, so this is actually a presentation within a presentation. This is something we've done a little while ago. This is a gross cap rate, and we're going to go through it really quickly. So we found this portfolio in Ohio where we basically bought in bulk. Keep on going. So first of all, I went through a little bit of demographics. Here's what illustrated it the most, but actually we did a lot more we did a lot more research than this. So I talked a little bit about the location. The person knew nothing about Ohio. Quite frankly, when we started, I didn't know anything about Ohio either. Let's keep going. Then I give an example about the property. I took a picture that was not bad. I also explained 350K, why was a minimum investment, because actually each home are about 50 to 60K, but the problem is that if you do this and you only buy one and there is a problem with that one, then your investment goes to hell, so you need to have enough volume so that it makes sense. We talked a lot about Section 8, we talked about the low vacancies, the maintenances, and so forth, etc. And then I came in with an example of a portfolio, what we could purchase them for, what was the monthly rent, annual rent, what was the taxes, the estimated thing, etc. What was actually our tax rate, how we would do the distribution, what kind of reserve we needed to do. This actually is just a snippet because I have an Excel. I still had it, and my partner deleted it because they didn't understand what was the link into it. But actually, it was linking directly to the initial research. We did this for 300 properties, and those 300 properties, including due diligence, including report, including the picture for each one of them, and including what was the cap rate for each individual one of them. So we needed to do the groundwork for everyone one by one, which translated into this. And this, you might consider it easy, hard, whatever you want. This is about 5% of all the work we had to put. And this is what we ultimately had to do to convince the person. So the amount of work, being more professional than the person on the other side, is absolutely key, because otherwise the deal's not going to happen. So you need to, we needed to know everything about that portfolio, up, right, left, everything. So it's really key. In B2B sales, it's all about knowing your product so that you can sell your product. That's exactly what we did. We went to know the product so that we could sell the product. And the amount of work it took was monumental. By the way, it gets easier afterwards. Once we sold that portfolio and it was working well, I could use those results to convince other people to invest. But first of all of the work that I had done in the past had helped me, but also the result that was working well helped to also convince other people to come in. We also needed to do a deal with on-site property management. We were taking care of the lease, etc. We had to build the entire structure for them. In those particular investors, we also, I didn't add it there, but they were foreign national. We needed to figure out what was a legal aspect of it, what was a tax deduction we could get, right? Creating an LLC under other LLCs, there was some legal work to do. It was a lot of work. I don't know how else to say it. Keep going. We talked about investment. It was going to be cash only because we couldn't get financing for it forever. We needed to put 10% deposit initially. We were going to take care of the due diligence. We're going to take care of the closing documents, on and so forth. So even once they said yes, we still had a lot of work to go through. All right, and this was actually at the end we were able to make 2%. All of this was for 2%. All right. So there was definitely a little bit of work. And the reason, by the way, it was 2% was because there was so much fucking work. There were so many people around the table. Like the settlement charge was going to be expensive. The legal fees were not that expensive, but still there. And all of this for 2%. Now we sold for $7 million. So you're like, oh, if you sell $7 million for 2%, that's great. Still a lot of work. And when we did this, we were presenting a portfolio that had a minimum investment of $350K. That guy took $2 million, so yippee, but he could have told us $250K. We wanted to sell that product. We thought it was going to be very good. It was a very large investment in the future. In the meantime, keep in mind that I did this portfolio with a partner. Neither of us were working as real estate agents, so we didn't have ongoing clients, we didn't have showings, we didn't have anything. We still had ongoing stuff at the office. As you can see, it's often very crazy there, but we didn't have to deal with anybody but those clients, and still it was a vast amount of work. Like we're talking about a month's worth of work that just went into this. Keep going. And I'm going to switch over to the emotional investor, but before we start on this, and before you get a read on this, any question about the financial investor? No? Not at all? You guys got it. You guys, like, next time I meet a financial investor, I'm just going to copy paste this, it's going to be done, it's going to be no problem. Any,
I have a comment. So this, on a financial investor, they make the money in acquisition, not with projections or forecasts. The forecast is just an extra gravy on top of it. So to be aware of it, going back to like the investors actually looking for a deal, they will cut and see where they can, in some cases on percentage, on 2%. The idea is moving with volume, right? So that's just a mentality when you work with an investor.
So I think one of the things that is one of the benefits of working with them is that typically when somebody is a financial investor, he has other friends who also invest, and whenever they have a good deal, they will go and they will jump into the good deal. So if you're able to find a good deal and you're able to get the first sale, typically it kind of keeps on rolling. Now finding those good deals is like in this case it was serendipity. We happened to find somebody who loved the deal but didn't have the money to do it. We said we can take care of that deal and present it to people that I knew well. I knew those investors because a lot of them came from my background of startup investors, and a lot of them all of their money is tied up in tech, and I was like, well, you should invest in something new. So knowing rich people and knowing people who make investment for a living helps a shit ton. Otherwise, how to meet them is actually in Miami. A lot of them mingle in the party scene, mingle in the Fisher Island scene. A lot of them mingle in all of those kinds. So if you do have access to this and you do meet them, then you need to talk to them. That's a good opportunity to see them. And at the very end, we're going to talk a little bit about if you do meet a financial investor and an emotional investor, how should you engage them to capture their attention? I can't at least the very first step. We can work on the first step, the welcome call of meeting them, if you will. After finding a product for them, that's an entire other story. Now the emotional investor by Maria Plasencia.
I'm the emotional one. Welcome everyone. Okay, so the emotional investor for the most part it's mostly who I've worked with. I have had financial investors come to me when I first moved to Miami, throwing all kinds of terminology at me, and I need this cap rate and I need that, and I just kind of crawled away into a corner because I really didn't know how to handle them. And then when I learned what a cap rate was, I was like, these guys are out of their mind, that doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, they will find it. And that's the plus and the downside of working with a financial investors, that you're going to be doing a lot of work and maybe not finding them anything that meets their numbers, and they're willing to wait. The emotional investor is not. The emotional investor, they're emotional. They want it now. They want it now. They want it now. This is what I want. I want to invest. I have a couple of dollars. I want to invest it. But when they think of what they want to invest in, they see themselves living in it. They see it more as a second home. They don't see it as a true investment. It's not all about the numbers. The part in their brains that clicks into thinking that this is an investment is, well, I'd like to rent it out and cover my costs. But is that what a true investor would say? No, they want to make money. So this is the type of investor, excuse me, that I have learned to work with the most. I have had buy and flips as well, which are also very hard to deal with, and by and large, these are the buy and hold. They buy and they hold it, they hold on to it until they can either sell it for some sort of a profit or they decide to move into it and use it as a second home. So location is very important for them because they see themselves living in it. They're not going to buy something in Opalaka. They're not going to buy something in the outskirts of Little Haiti. Location is going to be important. The finishes are going to be important. But most important is this. They're going to be looking to cover their costs. And so long as you can show them a property that's pretty, that's nice, that fits their needs, it's within their budget, and can cover their costs, usually they are very happy. And basically it becomes a sale like any other sale that we do in real estate. It's really not that complicated. It's just an individual that calls themselves an investor. Next. Okay, when you're dealing with an emotional investor, depending on whether it's a more experienced buy and hold person or it's a first-time investor, you're going to know also how quickly this is going to move along and how to prepare. And we're going to learn. We're going to talk in a little bit about how to identify. Basically, you need to identify when you come across someone that says that they're an investor. Well, how long have you been investing? What do you invest in? So forth and so on. You're going to identify them, and you're going to determine if this is their first property that they're buying, or if this is their third, fourth, 10th, or 11th. If this is their multiple property, chances are they're going to move quickly on something. They're now, you know, it's like anybody who has kids here, I don't know, with the first kid, we don't let anybody touch them. By the time you have your third kid, you're tossing them around like a football. You just don't care. It's the same thing with property. You've kind of been warmed up to the idea, and you're quicker to make a decision. So when you have that emotional investor and you know what kind they are, you're going to know how much time you have to devote to them in order to get that sale. And that's an individual thing. Are you willing to work with somebody for 8 months until you find them that investment property? And that's entirely up to you. But regardless of who you have, much like having a listing presentation, you need to have an investor presentation. And this is an example of an investor presentation. The information that you put on here is going to be very relevant to what your investor is looking for. So this is an example of a PowerPoint. Depending on the area or the building that they're looking in, you might want to tell them how many listings have gone in that area, so forth and so on. We can send this to you by email so that you have it. But basically the presentation should cover what are they buying into, how does the market look as a whole, how does the market look as a whole on the sale side, and how does the market look as a whole on the rental side. Because the idea is that they want to rent the property. And when you're crunching these numbers, not only do you want to get a realistic expectation of what they can rent the property out for, but you also want to get a realistic expectation of vacancy rates. Does anybody know what the standard vacancy allowance is when you're doing operating expenses?
5%.
5? What does 5% equal in terms of weeks? 1 to 2 weeks. Is that realistic for most rentals?
Probably not.
How many weeks are rentals usually on the market for before they get approved by an association? Right, 10%. A lot of us use the 5% rule, and because the 5% equates to homes and houses where there is no association or condo. When we're dealing with condos, the general rule of thumb is, I'm emotional, I set the lights on. The general rule of thumb is 10% or higher. You really need to do the legwork to find out. So again, more statistics. This might be overkill for the emotional investor, all of this information, but just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that you can put together and put in front of your investor. What this is going to do at the end of the day for the emotional investor or the very non-experienced investor, give them a snapshot of what's going on, and it's going to make you look like a professional and like you know what you're doing. And all of that information, all of this information is available at our fingertips. It's just a matter of pulling the reports and putting it all together. Rent trends, where we are. When is the best time of year to rent? You know, sometimes when the person wants to buy a property will determine what kind of negotiability they will have, and will determine what kind of rents they're going to be able to get. and lock into for that entire year. So having this information in hand just makes you a better consultant for that investor that may not know this information. Next. Okay, and then last but not least, what you're going to put together, much like in a listing presentation, you put together a CMA. At the very end of your investor presentation, what you're going to put together is an annual property operating data report, which is just like a balance sheet. It's a ledger, APOD for short. On there, you're going to have the purchase price, you're going to have the acquisition cost, mortgage, if there is a mortgage, if there is any financing involved, as it does come into play with the numbers. The potential income, which is the gross scheduled income that they stand to make. The vacancy allowance, which we're going to be very realistic with that, and the operating expenses, and then we're going to determine what the cash on cash is, we're going to determine what the cap rate is, so forth and so on. So now we're going to dive into an example annual property operating data report, an APOD. I went online and I found a property using my agent super skills. Went online and I came across this property at Brickell 10 that's selling well under market at $352 asking. I didn't even try and negotiate here. I'm assuming, you know what, I'm going to make a full price offer for this property, 704. It is a finished unit. It comes 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and it has 1 assigned parking and a storage space, which none of the other 2 bedrooms have anywhere close to this price range. They're all over $425. I thought this looks like a great investment. Does anybody agree with me? Does this look like a potentially great investment to buy this for $352,000? We get 3% commission to refer this to our investor, and they get a fully finished unit that they can rent out right away. I checked the vacancy rates in the building. They're about 10%, and 20% down. Next. All right, so here are numbers. We're going to purchase it for $352. Acquisition costs, which are closing costs in this particular case, our buyer does not have to pay us our commission, so that's not part of the equation. Roughly 2% of the closing costs, which would be $7,000. Our investor is going to get an 80% loan to value mortgage, and their monthly payment is going to be $1,512. I did a little more studies for the building and found out that the potential income, or the gross scheduled income for the building, is $2,550 a month. Annually, that's $30,600. Counting for a 10% vacancy allowance of $3,000, that leaves us with a gross operating income of $27,000. Our operating expenses in total are $20,000. So our net operating income is going to be the gross operating income less our operating expenses, which is $74,414. However, now we need to factor in the mortgage. Our mortgage annually is $18,000. So as an investment property, our investor is going to be out of pocket almost $11,000 every year with this property. Is it still a good investment?
The cap rate's 2%.
What?
What's the cap rate's 2%?
I mean, if you want to leverage, I mean, at least cover be down by 0.5, 0.2%.
Yeah, this is the gross cap rate.
Yeah.
All right, so
Which a lot of people
our
do.
net cap rate is in the negative. Well, there's a couple of things here, all right? I looked into a crystal ball, and I looked into the future, and I've determined, using my agent superpowers, that this area in Brickell, there's no more developments going on in Brickell, which we know is a lie. Just go along with me for a bit. No more developments happening in Brickell. The market's going to remain very stable in terms of inventory, and the demand is going to grow. So I believe that this property is going to have an increase in appreciation of at least 10%. So I tell my investor, you need to buy this. You're going to be upside down, $11,000 a month.
And we're going to stop there, right there, because actually it's a 10%. So earlier we have said that this is not a good investment because we're going to be losing almost $10,000. Now, for the challenge of this presentation, we have, as the superpower of Maria has said, we have discovered that this property will have an increase in value of 10%. And I want you to tell me, how is this going to change the game? Does this become a good investment or a bad investment? But don't worry, we're going to break it down into smaller bits. So go to the next slide, please. All right, so we're going to go slowly, okay, guys? We're going to do this together. We have an increase of 10%. What is the new sales price? Bring out your calculator, do what you need to do. You already calculated everything? Ah! All right, so what is the new sales price? All right, 387. Everybody has good eyesight. I'm happy to do this. What is the asset value now? What is your asset value? It's not 80%. We're 1 year. We're 1 year after we hold the property for 1 year, and now it's been we held the property for 1 year, and we're selling it after 1 year. And months over month, like on the day we bought it is the day we sold it 1 year later. So what is the asset value? The asset value now, your asset value. I don't think you've calculated, have you? Yeah. You did. All right. All right. So it's right here. But how did you get to this asset value? Who can tell me how they got to this asset value?
So the asset value is the amount of money that you're going to take out of the property when you sell it. Ideally, you already put 20% down on the property, so you're going to get the 20% back. In addition to the 20% that you already put down, which is $70,000 in this case, you have an equity buildup on this property of 5.9%. So you've made another roughly 6% equity, which equates to $20,000. On the sale of the property, you have the $70,000 and the $20,000 and the appreciation of 10%, which is another $35,000.
All right. So instead of Maria, who's already done this and actually calculated for you guys, who can regurgitate this for me? What are the three things that come into play when how have your asset has increased during that time? What are the three things that comes into play? Anna, give me a second so I can give a chance. Somebody else tell me, what are the things that you need to consider in terms of your asset if you sell 1 year later with an equity buildup of 5.9% and an increase in price of 10%?
Maybe property improvements? Is that what you're asking?
So basically, what is your asset? Like if you've invested 70K at the beginning of the property for a property that's worth 352, you have a 10% increase. You have a loan to value that's 20%. You have an equity buildup of 6%, 5.9, and a 10% increase. What are the three factors that you have to take when you sell your home to sell for 387%? So 387. All right. Anyone?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so you gotta think about what you put into it.
Okay.
You gotta think about what it cost you,
Okay.
and then how much appreciation you got out of it.
Okay. Good. So that's pretty close. What are the so if you sell 387, what are the parts that are going to go to you? Because you have a loan on it. So what are the parts that are going to go to you?
So whatever you put down,
Okay. Whatever you put down,
okay, however much it's appreciated,
those two.
and whatever rent you collected.
No, that would be true perhaps for the cash flow.
Or you're gonna deduct on the loan to value the 5.9%.
Correct. Okay. So rephrase it in easier. So you have. So
I'm not thinking of what I put down. I'm thinking of what the percentage I'm cashing out with, which is going to be 15.9.
Yeah, 5.9. You mean
15.9 plus you have a 10% appreciation, your capital gains plus a 5.9 on
that'd be correct. Would it be correct? Yeah, that would be actually correct. So it's your equity buildup plus the increase. The increase on the initial price is 100% to you, but on the original price you had an equity buildup of 6%. So this is actually your new asset. Your new asset is how much you put down, plus the equity buildup, plus the 100% of the increase. This is very, very, very important because it completely changes the game. Because now, remember, you still have, now we're going to go to the cash flow that you mentioned, you still have lost 10K in terms of over the year. However, you now have had such a big increase that actually you had the overall cost, that this is, all of this is cost. You jumped a little bit, but it's okay. All of this is cost, all of this is gain, and if you look at your new asset value and your new gain, it's actually 38K. So a property on which you're losing money every single year and you're losing 13% on it, if it appreciates 10% on the first year, you actually have a 43% return. All right.
Too risky for me.
No, it's okay. That's okay. What I'm saying, what I'm saying is that
risky. I mean, you're
if you had a black crystal ball or black ball, whichever kind of witchcraft you're doing, and you can say that this is going to have a 10% increase, would that be, and you had that with certainty, would that be a good investment?
All day, every day.
All day, every day, right? Doing 43% all day. So so go back.
Go back.
All right. So is this a good investment or is this a bad investment?
It's good.
With a crystal ball.
Depends.
That is exactly the answer. It depends on what is the goal of the investor. If the investor is a financial investor and he says, "I am looking for for equity and to make my money by reselling the property," this is a tremendous investor. And there is actually a lot of places where you can do this. For example, I will bet that at the next downturn, if you invest in Miami, you will probably be losing money year over year on rent, but over time you're doing very well. Who here has purchased a house in 2006? Well, okay, that might be.
No.
Yeah, we might be all a little bit young for this. Good news. We're very young.
2010, 2009, 2000.
All right, but I want to make it. Who purchased a house in 2009, 2010?
2008.
2008.
2009.
2009.
2009.
Why did you guys pick that year to buy and not 2 years before, 3 years before?
Buying the dips.
The market
The
dip.
market was at the lowest.
Okay, interest rate was very low, so that's very nice. But more importantly, asset value was very, very low.
People were able to acquire a loan under those circumstances.
Also, but we'll even forget the loan property. We'll just talk about the equity buildup. How did your equity buildup look like now, almost 10 years later?
Twice.
Yeah.
As much. Probably a lot.
Yeah, twice as much.
Why did I buy that year?
No.
what's a year
Did it
ago?
increase?
I still own the property. I've made 70% on it so far.
Yeah. So because actually it's not just a cash flow. It could, in this case, all three of them had. I'm sure you guys were all hoping for a good cash flow, but all three of them took advantage of the fact that the asset value was low, so that you could have an asset value buildup. And this asset value buildup is actually the largest play in America. This is what most people, how they earn money. Again, remember, most people, they buy their home to live there and then they have an increase in value. This is how they actually get rich. So this is actually very, very important. So to go back to our little example here, it's all about what is the goal of the investor. If the investor is looking to do equity value kind of deals, very different than if it's a cash flow value deal. And both of them have very different return. I will leave that part with one last thing. Who can explain to me in big words what caused the financial crisis of 2006,
Well,
2007?
very similar to 1986 with the savings and loan services.
Okay.
What happened is you have a primary market, you have a secondary market.
Yeah.
So when the primary market lends money, automatically get sold to the secondary market, which is Freddie Mac.
Okay, that's the financial side. Well, let's talk about the real estate side, because the real estate side crashed. So okay, so where anybody know what was happening in the price of real estate between 2005 2006 before the crash?
Well, there's a bubble.
It was increasing, and people started pulling equity out of it.
It was increasing very, very fast. Why was it increasing very, very fast?
It was super easy to obtain.
Leveraging.
It was very easy to obtain a loan. So what were people doing?
Getting loans.
Well, yes. So far so good. But what were they doing?
No docs, 0% down, 100% loan to value.
No income verification.
Alright, they were not refunding.
Buying homes and then creating the demand.
Alright, so here's what we're doing. And all of this is more or less correct, by the way, and Tim is very. So here's what I would do, is I would have a loan to value of 0, right? I would take a loan and I would buy a property that's worth $1 million today, alright? So loan to value 0, okay? Then I know that the prices are going up extremely fast. Extremely fast, I'm talking about 5-10% a year, like something completely ridiculous. So then I will wait for Anna to do the exact same thing. She's going to take a loan, 0% down. The price will have increased. I will sell it to Anna after a year. I made 10% out of 0. I have infinity amount of return. Then Anna is going to turn around and is going to sell it to Amalfi, who did the exact same thing, and all of those assets keeps on changing hand completely artificially, because the price of the asset was artificially increased by the ease of getting loan, and not by an actual increase in value of the property. And you can, of course, imagine that all of this works great until at one point you cannot reach a loan anymore, and at that point it all falls down. But what would happen if I did the same math? It's the same math. Oh, God. Today English is difficult. The same math, but instead of having done a loan to value at 80%, I would have done it at I would have done 100%. I would have done 97%. I would have put 3% down. What would have been my return if with a 10% increase?
Much better, 100%.
It would have exploded. It would have been an unbelievable return. And so that's actually very important, because a lot of equity plays are very risk-reward kind of plays. Meaning that if you fuck up, you lose a lot, and you can actually lose everything, including your house. A lot of people mortgages their house and do it with it. But in terms of returns, those are the best return you can have. Because if you look at a cap rate, you're just doing a rental play, you're looking at between 2 and 6% net. This is typically where the game is going to be played. If you're looking at an equity play, you can look at 40% return, 100% return on a very short period of time. This is why people used to flip so much, is because when there was a lack of transparency, you were able to have those kind of return on a very short period of time, but they were very risk-reward kind of return. So definitely a lot of elements there, a lot of different plays. I just wanted to point out that there is no secret sauce in investing. The things that are the most risky give the most returns. The things that are the least risky give the least return. But it really depends on the investor profile. Financial investors are ready to lose 10% of their equity so that they're able to make a lot more afterwards. So all in all, the living. But I want to leave you guys with some practical examples on how to approach an investor, because all of this is nice and good, but it's only theoretical until you actually meet one. So keep going. Yeah, who do you need to be to work with an investor? All right, so you meet an investor at a party, or through a friend, whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? So you meet an investor, and you know in advance that he's an investor because your friend told you that he's in real estate and anything. What do you need to do? What are the good things that you need to do to approach it?
The answer is not put out.
It's a little bit of an inside joke. Every Friday we share the wins of the company, what everybody has done. And last week, Maria, while writing her updates, she pressed enter too fast, and instead of putting the entire sentence, she did win of the week, I put out. So
I was gonna say put out a fire, but then
I mean, it was a win for a lot of people apparently, so it was good. So, all right. So, who do you need to be? So, okay, you meet an investor. You met an investor. How do you approach him? All right, but you're in a social setting. You're gonna come at me like, hey, I have a great deal for you. I think we're gonna go back to Maria's example. Like, what kind of deal are you offering here? So, how would you approach it?
It's just down their intro to a conversation in a social setting.
Okay,
Like
so
a regular common ground, like a regular all time. They're like, yeah, blah blah, and then you steer the conversation. I did that last weekend.
okay, so you steer the conversation, a regular introduction, but let's go into details. Let's play it live. You made an investor. I'm the investor. You know, you guys know that I invest in real estate.
I understand you're interested in looking for a place to invest.
No, I'm in a social setting, but I don't want to talk about work. So how are you going to do?
See it.
Nice to meet you.
So?
I was gonna say, like, just talk about something that happened in the news, or like an investment that happened
Yeah.
for someone else, so they probably read into it. Or
Yeah, that's a good way. What does investor or what does people in with money have in common?
I like to golf.
They like to golf. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But what do they have in common? What do they like to do? What do they like to talk about? They like to talk about money.
How they made money.
They like to talk about how they made money. Exactly.
So you invest, well, what did you invest in? Talk to me about it.
Exactly. They have big fucking egos.
Huge ego.
I mean, again, taking behind it, egos, right? They have huge egos. They have investment that they like to. They have made money. They invest in real estate. The easiest part. Hey, my name is Alan. I hear you're investing in real estate. How did you make your money? And then you have their attention for at least the next 15 minutes, at least. And then, so this is how to capture their attention. But now, if you say, "Oh, that's fantastic, you made some money," and then, what do? Now you've got them to talk to you. They got them to talk to you. They got them to show not really interest in you, let's be honest, interest in themselves, but at least they're currently speaking to you about what they do and what they love and what they've had success in.
Yeah, well, you talk to me like, hey, what are you doing now? I'm investing in stocks. How much are you making a year? I'm making 3%. Like, I can get you an 8.
So that's actually very close. Yolanda, you raised your hand? No, you scratch your head.
What challenges they're facing, how we can help them?
So how you can help them is okay because they already have help, right? They've already been able to do it,
And their ego is
and they have their ego, so they
Well,
already.
don't phrase it like that, I'm gonna help you.
Well-
Share some opportunities with them, some examples.
You need to share the opportunity. Look, you know what? I have something very similar to this that I think you didn't see. Now, ideally, you do, you really do, and you can share with it. But if you don't, you always have to tell them that A, you have a common ground and you need to understand their language, because while they're going to talk about how they made money, they're going to throw all of the keywords that we just talked about. They're going to use them as if they were natural to them. Because it is natural to them. This is what they look like all day. And they assume that you know what the hell they're talking about. And so whenever you have to present an opportunity, you need to frame it for them. You need to frame it for, okay, you have a cash on cash of 10% a year. That is unbelievable. Actually, that would be unbelievable. If you have an opportunity like this, talk to me after this. But you have a cash on cash year over year of 5%. That's unbelievable. That's great. I actually have a client I actually have a product that just did 6 and another one that just did 4. That's a little bit less risky. I think it's very important, very interesting. Do you have some time this week to go and talk about it? And then he'll say yes, and then you control the next step. Remember, whenever you go and schedule something, you need to have a verbal confirmation of when it will be. If you tell them like, oh, we'll talk, this is the last time you're talking. So, hey, I have a great opportunity that does this and this. Ideally, add a few information on top of it, where it is, what it does, and so forth. You can imagine that every time I meet an investor, I talk about the Ohio deal, because I know it back and forth, left and right, how it works, what it doesn't do, and so forth. The challenges, the things, etc. So, here, and then I said, well, when do we meet? Wednesday is one fantastic, morning or afternoon, 10 a.m., blah, blah, and then you control the next step. So it always goes into A, asking them how they made their money, like how's it going, etc. B, showing that you're part of the same kind of world and that you guys have something that they don't have. And 3, controlling the next step. And after you have to do the follow through, but we can't go through the follow through today. The first part that I want to touch about, because I forgot it and I realized it, is when you ask them what kind of investment they make, what are you going to enable you to discover as well?
Whether he's a financial or a emotional.
Exactly. He's going to discover, you're going to be able to discover if it's a financial or emotional investor, because if it's a emotional investor, we're going to go to South Beach. We're going to go to Edgewater. We're going to go to some place that's nice. If it's a financial investor, we're going to my office and we're going to be looking at numbers. A very, very different follow through. So this is basically a tidbit. If you can go towards next slide, please. Identify who you're talking to, relate, set up a meeting. Those are the really 3 key steps. And I know it's not that different from what we usually do. That's normal. So the initial first step are exactly this. And this is the end of the presentation. Before we go to the next step, in the next training, is there any questions that you guys might have on the thing? This is the end of the ABC of working with investors. As I mentioned, it's ABC. It's really the minimum that I could cram into 2 hours on how to work with investors. Home 61 agents, if you have an investor and you want to work on it and you're not sure how to do follow step, if you're part of it, if you have, just talk to your team leader, Carlos, myself, Tim, Maria, we can work on it together. We can create a plan, we can create an action plan. That is not a problem at all. If you want to learn more about how to do investments or the financial part of it and so forth, and it's a little bit over our, if basically you need a class in finance, basically we can direct you to great classes in finance that will do a better job than us. But if you need to work with investors, then you need to know how to handle the financial, emotional, and research part of it. We're here, we can help you. Since those are some of the things that we can offer and go deeper and go on a one-on-one basis to serve exactly your purpose. But that is the overall. After this is what's going to happen. We're going to send you all of the nomenclature slides, save them somewhere that is available and easy to reach. I doubt that you guys are going to be reading about it when you don't have an investor, but when you do have an investor, read over it. Those terms are going to come back. If anything, we're going to also attach a bigger pencilet, which is a little bit thicker, that has more definition in there, which has some kind of refresher and some kind of more elements. We didn't go over every single one of them for the sake of time. Those are the most important ones, but we're going to share both of them. Any questions? Yes, Adam?
I would just like to say, well, my whole Instagram and my tagline is that every purchase you make is an investment. Even if you're buying it for yourself, you can also throw this into your regular primary home buyer, because they like that, you know?
Yeah.
They're the ones that are building equity. That's really how we turn over the renter to a buyer, right?
I think that's a very common thing, and I think that the part of renting versus buying is a great one, and actually one that we were just seeing earlier that Alan also had earlier. And actually, currently, I'm doing a sale. I'm trying to sell the apartment where the tenant is living in, because I told him, like, hey, for $4,000, you make me rich. For $5,000, for the low price of $5,000, this could be yours. And so we're looking to get him to purchase it. And this is, I think, a very, very good way of looking at it. Asset building for the future, and so forth. But this is also closer to emotional investment, meaning it's all about not losing money by paying rent, and all about gaining or breaking even with buying a home. So that's definitely a good way to look at it, for sure. What else? Anybody else? All right. So let me add one more thing on Anna's comment. I think it's very nice. What would be the debt servicing on a property for $200,000? More or less. For a loan, so the loan would be 160, right? It will be a loan to value of 20%. Well, 80% of loan. 80% of loan. Yeah.
200?
What do you say? Do you have it from from the back of your head?
No, what's the interest rate?
All right. So it's going to be about 1,200. So the debt servicing for this would be 1,200. Somebody who's paying, so that means that somebody who's currently paying rent for 1,500 or for 2,000, assuming he has a good credit score, could buy a 200K home and save money by doing debt servicing instead of doing rent. I mean, we have a lot of motherfucking rentals. Not all of them have the best credit score, blah, blah, okay. But a lot of them do. Why not purchase? Like, why not purchase? If you're paying $3,000 rent, in terms of debt servicing, this translates into a very big amount of property that you can purchase. So definitely something that you should consider. I didn't quite plan on talking about this right now, but if you are interested in knowing how to calculate this and so forth, come and see me after this, absolutely no problem. Great way to turn renter into buyers. Thank you, Anna, that's a big business. But all right, for the next trainings, for the next training, what we have, we're going to have tech in the real estate world. We're changing our Hello Sign feature so that it's better, and there is a lot of new little tech updates that we're going to be covering. This presentation is hopefully going to be done entirely by John, but if John needs a little hand, I might chime in as well. Time management, I think this is key. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but time management is absolutely key. We're going to do this a month from now. I'm going to be presenting it as well. Time management is because you guys have one of the hardest jobs that there is. You guys control entirely how you manage your time. However, your responsibilities include, but is not limited to, looking for clients, building channels, building a zone of influence, taking care of leads, doing showings, negotiating contracts, making sure that things are following through, understanding why the hell the inspection came back so bad, having to work with egos of listing agents and buyers. All of this is such different responsibilities that come back one after the others. Time management is absolutely key. And so we're going to give a lot of advice and very practical and a set that you can apply on the time management. So basically you'll be able to download this and then apply it to yourself, and I can promise you it will work. You can of course change it to your own, but this will at least have a template for you guys to do. We're going to talk about Facebook lead generation as well. If you're ever interested into trying to do leads on Facebook, it doesn't work company-wide, but it works very well on a super targeted area. So if you work a very super targeted area, I encourage you to do this. And then we're going to introduce a new photography partner who will have enhanced capacity, which includes drone, videos, 3D, and on and so forth, that will be available that we currently don't have this a la carte, and we will. So this is basically the next training, and now we're going to be doing a session on role playing, and to make it a little bit more live compared to what we have done before, we're not only going to have the objection management from before, but we're adding also the profile